Needs of attendees. Please welcome your host, Tracy Stuckrath.
Thanks, John. And hello, everybody. I see we've got 17 people here, and John's going to keep us in the loop on who is joining us from the live stream. So please let me know. I will definitely recognize you if you're on the live stream. So if you've got questions from there, please ask them because I will address them. We have got a lot to get started with here. So my first question, or the first thing I want to do is tell you what I told you that I was going to cover and the essential learning components here. We're going to learn about how to feed diverse dietary needs of attendees. We're going to create how to create safe and inclusive dining experiences and increase your revenue and employee retention. And I know that might sound a little odd as a meeting planner, potentially if that's what your role is as a meeting planner, how do you increase your revenue? There is an opportunity to do that, as well as especially if you're doing it for your coworkers at your company, right? How to create retention of your employees, but also your meeting attendees if they're not your employees. And stay till the end because I've got a couple of bonuses for you, as well as letting you know how you can get more information, because catering to the diverse dietary needs of attendees takes a lot of time. It is not an easy task, but hopefully with what you learned today and my other tools that I have for you, that you can actually make it a lot easier for yourself. Okay, so this next slide that I have up here is from Jack. He's a client of mine. He actually, I threw this in here this morning. He called me yesterday and he said, "Hey, I can't make your thing, can't make today's webinar, but I have this question for you." He said, we had so many various dietary restrictions at our first event that it was hard to manage. This is the list of the dietary restrictions that he got from his event that just happened 2 months ago. How many of you get these same lists? Shout out in the text if this is a similar list that you get. And is this normal? Is it challenging? How do you manage it? Will says yes. Wendy, yes, you got that list. And one of the things in our conversation yesterday, because he's like, "Can you consult me on how to work on this?" And he's like, "How do I manage all of these things?" And then the people who put in, and I was laughing with him, that somebody says they don't eat, I'm looking at the screen here, do not eat beef, pork, seafood, but I do eat chicken, shrimp, and vegetarian. They just said they don't eat seafood, but they eat shrimp, right? So I'm sure that everyone gets those questions. And Carrie, that's a really good question that you have. Are those restrictions or are they preferences? And that's a really good question that you need to address during registration. And we'll talk about a little bit about how you can do that. But definitely the allergies and how do you ask those questions? Because some of them are medically necessary. There's a couple people here that have put that they're celiac or they're strict versus cross-contamination. They cannot have that cross-contamination. And so you definitely need to play into each one of those. So when you registered for this event, I'm sure that there's 3 different perspectives, or I'm thinking that there's 3 different perspectives that brought you to this webinar. Reason number 1, are you overwhelmed by all of these dietary restrictions and you spend so much time figuring out that list and filtering it? Now, Jack, when he does his event registration form, he just leaves it at an open-ended question box, right? And lets everybody just fill it in, right? That can really be overwhelming. And I know that. I mean, before I got diagnosed with food allergies, that's kind of what I was doing as well. And then reason number 2, you might be frustrated. You're okay with this, but you might be frustrated with it because it does get overwhelming. And maybe you're frustrated by your catering partner. How do they manage that, right? Or you're getting different results from them. And one event, somebody was telling me they lost their executive chef a week before his event. And what do you do with that? Right? So you've had all these conversations. So that gets really frustrating. And you don't want to get complaints about what they've ordered, right? That's the last thing that you want to do. Or are you the next guy, reason 3, that you just want to learn a little bit more? You love planning meeting menus, but you need help creating some more memorable experiences. So let me know in the chat which one of these is you. Are you overwhelmed? Are you frustrated, or are you excited? Which one are you? Wendy's, all three. Okay, that's good. I like that. And hey, John, will you jump to the next slide for me?
Mhm.
And then let's do, Wendy's, all three of them. Is anyone here overwhelmed? Really overwhelmed by it? And that's just kind of where you are. How many of you don't even know? I mean, I'm sure that you're all here because you do manage these dietary restrictions. You're already having these challenges. I didn't even throw this challenge in here. Did you even know that you have to accommodate them? Right? And I say have to, did you ever think that you needed to accommodate these individuals? And, that's another thing that we need to think about too. So, and I am a meeting planner. This is my background. Before we jump into, because I do want to talk about your frustrations and your overwhelming, but a little bit about me is that I am a meeting planner. I've been a meeting planner since the 1990s, 1990 probably, or 89. And I got diagnosed with a food allergy when I was a corporate planner. I was planning 100 events a year and I couldn't eat at any of my events. And my allergy is yeast. So that meant no sugar and dairy and peanuts and pistachios and gluten and vinegar. And my list was long, and it was frustrating. And I couldn't do anything about it. And I lived about 6 years of doing that and going to Whole Foods and buying hummus because I didn't know how to figure out, make hummus, which is really simple. But right now it's actually cheaper to just buy it. But, figuring that out. And then I ended up taking a course on how to become a health coach. And I decided that I wanted to educate our industry on how to feed me and the other 1,500 people that were in that class with me. And so I started Thrive 2010, and I'm trying to do the math, 12 years ago. And since then I've been on stage and on 5 continents, and I've spoken to over 30,000 people about this. I've also become a certified food protection manager, and I understand the alcohol, and a health coach and a meeting planner and a meetings manager. So I know where you sit, but I also know the frustration of being an attendee going through this. So certified food protection. Thanks, John. And it is very frustrating. And if there's one little button there, or right under event professional consultant, 32 million Americans have food allergies. And that is life-threatening food allergies. It's a study that came out in 2019. It's not just, as Carrie asked, are those preferences, or are those preferences, or are they actual dietary restrictions? So going back to, which one of you, the next question that I have for you is, how do dietary needs impact your planning process? And I want to, John, if you can bring up the gallery, I would love people to pipe in here and share with me some of the frustrations that they have with planning meetings and how they impact them.
If you'd like to share, just unmute and or turn on your camera. Welcome.
Yeah, please. I really want to know, what are your challenges? Anybody? Expense, added staffing to accommodate. Carrie piped in on the chat. That's a good point. Want to talk about those expenses as well. Actually, to be honest with you, there shouldn't be additional expenses to accommodate the different dietary restrictions, especially the ones that are medically necessary. Because, and I'll just go ahead and address this, that in 2008, the Americans with Disabilities Act was amended. And with that amendment came new words to the list of major life activities, which is all of our bodily functions, as well as eating. Eating was not listed before 2008. And so now that gives civil rights protections to our attendees with food allergies and celiac disease and diabetes. And so unless it's a really big undue burden for a catering company to do that, they shouldn't be charging you extra money. Kristen said 20 million different dietary cards and making sure the attendee has it. Good point. Yep. Dietary cards, understanding, what they, giving them a card. How do you make sure that everybody has it? How do you know the staff understands it? We're going to talk a little bit about all of that there. Anybody else? Nobody wants to share on screen, which is fine. No worries.
Kristen also made a comment too about how doing a seated dinner is really hard. Can you address that, Kristen?
Doing a seated dinner is really hard. And I don't know if you use, there's different platforms out there that you can actually upload your attendee list and with their dietary restrictions. And if it is a predetermined, this is where everybody's seated, you can actually then move them around and their dietary restriction goes with them. And I think All Seated does that, as well as I think the one that Cvent bought. John, what's that called?
Air tables or something like that?
No, but Airtables might do it. Never assign seats. So that's a really good, I really wish we could get, hi, Deidre Young, GPS, to our attendees on the show floor, in that thing. So some app, let's come up with that, right? Let's do that. That would be really, really helpful to be able to find people. But I think it's really doing some due diligence and having some conversations, Kristen. And let's see, any other thing in there? Never assign seats, just assign assigned tables, that would work, right? You can say, hey, here are the people at your table that have these needs. And it does talking to your serving staff, because there's an event I went to years ago, and the servers, we were all given dietary cards from the meeting planner. And day one, the server, she had like 6 of us at a table, and she took all of our cards, and then she came back and our cards were on top of our plate, which was covered, and she handed them to us, the right one with the right person. But the next day, the kid, and I say that because he was a temporary person who was probably about 18, came to work that day, and he's like, what do I do with this? He had no clue. So it is having those conversations with your banquet team. But to me, the challenge is how it impacts it is your timing, how much time does it take you to do this? There's also that legal risk and financial risk. And, if Deidre, because your name is right there in front of me on the screen, like if Deidre tells you that and she comes and she doesn't get fed well, she might not come back the next year. Right. And especially how many of you are corporate planners versus association? Type in the chat there, if you're corporate, association, social planners, and so, because that really does kind of impact a lot of things. So Will Johnson, your association, Kristen, higher education, association, corporate. That's a really good way to delineate it, because to me, as if you're a corporate planner, you're planning for your colleagues, right? And I did a webinar on Tuesday, just 2 days ago, and we'll be doing it again next Wednesday, called Diversity, Equity, Inclusion. What does food and beverage have to do with it? And that really plays into your corporate and possibly your association, impact, or what you're trying to accomplish with your company, right? Associations. I had one meeting planner ask me at an event a couple of years ago. She said, well, we've got somebody who's allergic to pepper. And my executive director said, well, no, that's not true. Nobody can be allergic to pepper. We're not going to accommodate them. And I looked at her, I'm like, does that person, and Wilson, she said association, does Will's money, membership money, matter to you? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, does his registration to that conference matter to you? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, then what's the question? Why not provide that accommodation? So corporate, nonprofit, association, not-for-profit. Yeah, same thing. I'm like, if you've got a membership group that you rely on their retention, right? Or their employees, right? Retention, you want to keep those members. It's really important to think about that, the financial implication of that. So, but we also have to think about the different dietary needs that we have, the food diversity that our attendees have. Deidre, government-wise, you've got another legal aspects on that as well. But thinking about the food diversity of our attendees comes into play big time here. There you go, John. Thanks. You've got up in that upper left-hand corner, tacos, even though everybody loves tacos, right? That comes with that Mexican cultural theme. In the bottom right-hand side, you've got the Asian cuisine, Southeast Asian, Northern. You've got people who follow diets for climate reasons, because they want to save the planet. There's vegetarians and vegans. There's individuals who utilize wheelchairs or scooters, or have, like a couple of years ago, I tore my rotator cuff and my arm was in a sling. So how many of you, the next slide shows, and you've got peanut allergies. The next slide shows all the different dietary requests that you have, similar to John's or Jack's that was at the front. So let me know in the chat, what dietary restrictions are you getting the most requests for? Is it gluten-free? Is it vegetarian? Is it food allergies? And the words on here that like wheat, celery, sesame, those refer to actual allergens. And, cereals containing gluten, meat. Later this month, I think it's on the 21st, I'm interviewing 2 women who have the alpha-gal syndrome, which is an allergy to mammals. They cannot have any mammal meat. They can't have any mammal byproducts. So they actually can't even have surgery that individuals are putting pork skin into people. Doctors are putting pork skin. Deidre's got vegan and gluten-free plus nut allergies. Kim, vegan and gluten-free. So that's a big rise in vegan. And I think because we saw vegetarian a lot, but I think these days a lot more people coming out of COVID are looking for more plant-based options, gluten-free in a variety of allergies. So similar to Jack's up front. Tanya, I'm curious, your gluten-free and your dairy-free, are those requests coming together or are they coming separately? Are they coming from the same people?
I'm starting to see an overlap. Some
Yeah.
person might be gluten-free and no dairy because of medical conditions. It's
Right.
actually a colleague of mine. But and they're coming in almost double pre-pandemic. So
wow. And there is a big correlation with like celiac disease and dairy allergies. And so that has a big play in it. And in celiac disease being an autoimmune disease, it also means you could actually have other autoimmune diseases with it, diabetes. So that might be playing a lot of it into it as well. Deidre says, we have those individuals that request kosher and halal, but turns out they just want vegetarian. We've started to calling to confirm what they really need. That's a smart move, Deidre. It really is. I actually saved my client about $3,000 in April by calling the 3 individuals who requested kosher. And granted, our event was being held over Passover. And so we had one individual who needed the kosher meal from the kosher caterers for 3 meals. And then we had 2 different gentlemen that wanted just the food label. They would eat off the buffet. Audrey, 2 garlic allergies. Tell me about that. I mean, is it like they can't have garlic at all? And is it airborne garlic?
They can't eat garlic at all. And airborne, they're okay, but it's more just do they consume it. So it makes it a little tricky for the menus.
It does. And my friend Candace has the same thing. And actually, one day we were supposed to be on a Zoom and she said, Tracy, my face is breaking out. My hands are breaking out. It was in her hair product. The garlic was. And it is really kind of amazing, but she can't go to her favorite restaurant anymore because they actually now started adding garlic to the brine that they're roasting the chicken in, right? So paying attention to that, asking those questions, which really adds to our frustrations. And then when we look at so we've got all these dietary restrictions, right? And then we go to the catering menu that we've got. And this is an example. I pulled this from a local menu, or not a local because I'm in a small town, but from a hotel catering menu that's current, right? This is what it's labeled. Is it labeled? It's not. All right. The kosher, Tanya just posted in here, kosher has also been a challenge for me as some of my go-to places have now closed. Really good point. It's almost impossible to find kosher in some more suburban resorts. My friend, I actually just sent, I'm going to put this in the chat real quick. I texted him last night. When you're traveling, he said this website link is a great resource to finding kosher caterers and kosher Jewish consultants in the area. They might be able to actually help you find kosher meals. But going back to that event in April that I had, I asked the hotel for this and they're like, well, nope, we're not opening our kosher kitchen. Well, the kosher kitchen was $3,500 to open and they weren't going to do that for 3 people, or at least my client wasn't going to pay for it. But I called 12 different companies during, and they're like, we're not doing Passover. We're not doing Passover. And it ended up my client my hotel ended up doing it for me, but I understand your frustration 100%. And Jocelyn, you said, I've got restaurants pushed back now with all the staffing issues that they will not support dietary restrictions, even allergies. Okay, can I just pull my hair out? I really do. And that's where I think, especially, okay, so a restaurant, we need to be a lot more diligent with our restaurants for sure. But I think we need to be a lot more diligent with how we're reporting. And we're going to get to that in a few minutes. John, they have a garlic festival. Yes, they do. But my challenge with when we're looking at this catering menu here, right, that there's nothing labeled. And I've had this problem numerous times, and it's 25 emails back and forth going, what you're doing. So my big tip here is to actually, talk to your catering team before you contract. Ask them about the menus, and, ask them, can they be labeled? And, can you talk to that culinary team before you start planning any menus and before you even contract? But now when we're looking at these catering menus, I'm going to show you some pictures. And, all right, and we're going to talk about this breakfast menus real quick, but I'm going to address this anonymous question in here. Halal is tough. We can do halal style, but finding a halal caterer who delivers one meal is almost impossible. Also hard to tell if the meal needs any blessing versus ingredient restrictions. Kristen, the sales team should know now that we need dietary info. Oh my gosh, woman. Yes, ma'am, we do. The sales team should understand that. They should be having conversations with the kitchen 100% of the time. Okay, going back to the halal, that is a really good point. I'm using an example from a hotel, or not from a hotel, but from a company cafeteria. There's my friend Amelia Eckes works. She's the general manager of a company cafeteria. And because of the dietary restrictions that she knew of, she made sure that everything that they were ordering was halal meat, so that she didn't have to worry about that. Now, I'm sure that our hotels and our catering companies are not doing that same thing, but there's a lot of, we need to understand, and I don't have time to go through this at all right now, but some chefs can actually cook halal without having to have it. It's halal. I'm going to say halal style, which is probably not the right way to say that, but we have to have those conversations up front. Hello, Lynn Wallish and Sarah Matheson. Appreciate you being here. These breakfast muffins here. Now, I want people to tell me in the chat, what allergens do you see in these muffins or that are hidden? Anybody? What do you see in that? And pop in here, open up, just turn on your mic and shout them out. They don't need to be chat. Eggs, Autry, right? Nuts, gluten, dairy, Deidre, nuts. Yep. If these were pre-bought by one of the food service companies, there's probably also soy hidden in them. It's used as a big filler in that, in a lot of muffins. So depending on what you have. And then the next photo we have here, I'm just going to change it up here. These vegan quinoa burgers. What do you think, what kind of allergens could potentially be in these vegan quinoa burgers? Dairy, soy. Hopefully there's no dairy in them, because the venue is telling me that they're vegan. But Tanya, good point. It might be whatever they might be using. It might say casein, or it might say whey, and somebody might not know that means dairy. Soy, sesame, great, Jocelyn, because that's a lot of those things are used. And Audrey, you said nuts. Perfect, because that's what's used in a lot of vegan dishes, is that. But what about the Jocelyn, mushrooms? Yes. What about that bun? Right? Just because it's a vegan burger doesn't mean that that's not gluten-free, right? So red dye number 5, John, that's true. Maybe, you never know. And some people are allergic to that. Let's see, what other pictures do we have up here coming up? This the next one is a beet salad, spinach and beet salad with candied walnuts and blue cheese. So what has anybody had a salad and worked with their chef to change the salad or something similar to this? Pipe in, let me know in the chat, or, open up, turn on, turn off your mic and let me know how you've changed this salad. I always ask for toppings on the side, the nuts and the cheeses. Great, Audrey, that's great. Nuts are always on the side, not all depending on delegate responses. Kim, salad bars. I love the salad bars. My big challenge with salad bars is they put all of the ingredients like right next to each other. And so somebody might be using tongs from the cheese to pick up the radishes and things like that. Or so it does, that's a little bit of a challenge because some of these questions here or some of these dishes, oh, John, will you jump back to that slide with the menus real quick? It was number like 4 back. Yeah. My challenge here is how is this presented? Right? You've got these things here, but how is it presented on the buffet? Right? And then how is it cooked in the back of the house? Those are questions that you have to have, especially if you've got somebody who's got different dietary restrictions. So asking those questions, and it's especially going back to the staffing issue that somebody mentioned earlier, it does become a challenge. And maybe they're pre-ordering some of these things pre-made, or they're from a ghost kitchen, or they're, buying it pre-packaged so that they can just put it out. But again, those conversations need to be had. Okay, John, do me a favor and jump to the one right after the salad, number 17, slide 17. So we've got sliced grilled pork with Thai chili sauce and garlic bread. Now, there's a planner that I know who doesn't serve anything that has pork or shellfish or nuts in it because he's got an international based group. Are you the same way? I mean, how often do you serve pork on your menu? Kristen's like, no pork for us ever. Why is that, Kristen? Same, and Jocelyn, the same thing, and Pam, the same thing. That really intrigues me. I like that. So Sarah is saying on here, post-COVID, massive increases in gluten and dairy-free in population because of COVID impacted the immune systems. Great point, Sarah. And I really appreciate that because the immune system has triggered, the COVID has triggered our immune systems a lot. Higher education, so lots of international of guests. And so you really do need to pay attention to that diverse need that you've got. Most pork we have is bacon, but never as a sandwich or an entire option. Deidre, that's a great point. Talking about bacon, right now there's a discussion in the Supreme Court because California, for climate reasons, has put bacon on the table. It was voted that bacon, any pork brought into the state of California needs to meet certain guidelines. And so it's now, the pork producers are now taking it to the Supreme Court to say that they can't do that. So that's a whole nother conversation, around pork even as well. Okay, so the last picture, the next picture I'm going to show is of pecan cheesecake. And I put the word pecan in there because it looks like there's some pecan crumbles on there. And that is dangerous because it probably just says cheesecake on their menu. And maybe they have shredded some pecans on the top. Nicole Smith, thank you for joining us on Facebook. What about that crust, right? Maybe the crust has got the pecans in it, right? And so understanding what that is, or that, what is that? The drizzle there, maybe that has wheat in it, because some caramel has wheat in it, right? So getting and asking these questions, but you don't know that by just reading the label. And I know this is one of the biggest frustrations we have. Okay, so the next one, I really want to take a dive away from food and talk about alcohol for a second. There are allergens in alcohol. Not all alcohol is vegan, and not all alcohol is gluten-free. And there are individuals who do not drink alcohol or eat alcohol because for religious-based reasons or because they are in recovery, right? Audrey has a couple of alcohol allergies in her group, and that's a really important conversation to have. I actually had the event I did in April. We had a woman who I think she's in her 80s, and she said to me, she's like, if there is any white wine, any alcohol in the beverages, or I think it was wine, just wine, in the food that you serve, I will projectile vomit on you. And so we needed to make sure that there was no wine in any of the food that we were serving, and food or in the beverages, so she could stay safe. But these are questions to have. And does anybody know why wine and beer might not be vegan? You can open it up. Open up your chat or the chat, open up your microphone is what I'm trying to say there to let me know. Deidre, good girl, good. That's smart, because animal filters might be used. Yes, ma'am. Eggs might be used. Fish skins might be used. There are some that are actually, you can find some vegan options. And I'm going to type this link in here, copy. I should have given this to John in advance, but I'm going to, let's see, to everyone in the meeting. There we go. Barnivore.com is a great link to find vegan spirits, wine, and beer. It's definitely something to pay attention to. But I want to know, has anybody had luck in requesting zero proof beverages from their hotels? Can anybody come on and share with me some great examples of getting those that are not charging you $24 a glass for those?
Matthew's definitely got a great chat, though, about your finding agents.
Thank you, Matthew. Yep, that is the correct word, the finding agents. It is really something that we need to pay attention to, and understanding that those happen. And I'm sure that your sommeliers probably know that. Hopefully they know that. But it is a question for your food and beverage directors, and understanding that. Thanks, Google. Yes, I appreciate that too. Audrey, hotels are rough. Actually, on my Eating at a Meeting podcast in January, on January 4th to be actually, is my guest is a bartender who has gone vegan as well as zero proof, and he's talking about how that impacts it. But he did say that our hotel bartenders are not to the level of a restaurant bartender. So we have a lot of education to do, because a lot of times they're just our servers. So we have to have these conversations way up front. I wonder why that is. Hotel food and beverage is a large part of revenue, 100%, but they get more money, I think, from their hotel rooms than they do from the food and beverage. It's a small percentage, even though it doesn't seem like that, right? But it's our biggest expense. And so we're having to spend a lot more time and paying a lot more attention to it, because it is our largest expense. And I hopefully that we can convince them and let them understand that. And then going to showing, I pulled up a convention center website and to see what non-alcohol, and I was excited actually that they had a non-alcoholic beverages page, but look what's on here. The K-Cup service is $300 and for 50. So what that is, $6 a K-Cup, if I can do my math correctly. How many of you are getting, well, we're not even going to the cost of coffee. That's a whole nother conversation. But I don't like the fact, and maybe I didn't go further to the dinner menus for non-alcoholic beverages, but that there's no other options besides, your canned soda and your Powerade and your Red Bull. We need to stop doing sugar laden. And John posted a quote in there from Jesse Hawkins, about sugar bombing us with all of these things. It's like the lemonade. I'm sure how much sugar is in that lemonade. Yep. And then let's go to the next. Okay. So we're going to jump into secrets. And here, I'm going to give you some of my secrets on here on how to do this. And we're at 10:40. So we got to speed through here some. Service levels. We have to understand our service levels, and that's you and I as planners, as well as the service levels of our hotels and convention centers. And again, as the staffing issue is a challenge that we have right now behind the scenes, in the kitchen, as well as the front of the house. So how many of you are asking about dietary restrictions on your event registration system? And what kind of reporting are you getting back from that? You're always asking it. How are you asking those questions? I'm glad that you're doing it. Are you asking specifically, or are you asking for open-ended boxes like this report shows here? And then I'm so loving that everybody is asking those questions. John, go back one slide for me real quick, because I also want to talk to Deidre, open-ended question, then we follow up. I really do suggest using some checkboxes and set with an open-ended question after the fact, specific and open-ended if they need to add more notes. I love that, Tanya. And then Kelly, same thing for anything that's not listed. So we have to think about this service levels that we're doing, and it starts with that registration site. Yesterday on my podcast, live podcast, event planner who does registration systems really talked about how she does it on that as well, highlighting that, but making sure that our servers are understanding what we're serving, asking your catering team, how are they regulars who've worked here for years, or are they 65% of them? I heard from somebody the other day, 65% of the staff is temp and they just showed up the day before, right? So we need to have those conversations up front with our catering partners about that. And what kind of training are you providing them? Can you pay them an extra hour to come in that day to make sure that they understand what service levels that you're expecting? It gives them some, added money in their pocket, but also helps them, shows them that you care about what they're doing. And then what about the food quality and the food presentation? How are you, how is that being presented? How is it being done? Having these conversations about that and understanding the dietary restrictions, because, looking at this buffet here, it looks like a lot of things are very close to each other. So how are you delineating those different things? Johnny, I was going to ask everybody, which dietary needs are most requested at your events? He typed in that whole list. Zoom won't let us do a poll with more than 10 options, but I think we've gotten a lot of answers, but lupine, has anybody said that to you? Celery allergy, low glycemic, anybody telling you that they're diabetic, right? What service level are you providing them if they're telling you, Carrie, great one, nightshades. That is another one that's becoming quite, I don't want to say popular, but quite common. Individuals who are allergic to nightshades. That's you. Okay, yes, ma'am. And can you come on here real quick and tell people, you can do it audio only if you want, and just let people know what that means?
Oh, sure. Hi, everybody. So nightshades is kind of a weird group of a bunch of cousins, is the way I like to put it. It's a very random group of foods, but genealogically, they're all connected. So most common is tomato or white potato. And you're allergic to nightshades, but you can be allergic to things in varying forms and varying degrees. And so for me, those are my two highest culprits. But it also contains eggplants, bell peppers, cayenne pepper, paprika, turnips. There's a whole litany of items, and every day I'm actually learning more and more. But yeah, it's pretty widespread, and unfortunately, it's a lot of the base ingredients.
Yeah.
And a lot of seasonings. So that's becomes a bit of a problem.
Well, and that's hard because when a chef too, if they're not cutting up that bell pepper and putting it in it, but it's in a packaged food or a canned food that they have, and they're saying spices or natural flavorings, it's hidden in there. Yes,
absolutely. And unfortunately, a lot of newer chefs straight out of college are aware, I'm finding, but a lot of veteran chefs are just not aware of the allergy because it is a fairly uncommon one. Right. And a lot of people don't necessarily refer to it as nightshades when they're explaining it. They might say they're allergic to potatoes, or they might say they're allergic to bell peppers, but in essence, they're really allergic to nightshades.
Right. Exactly. And it is a wide variety. And some people could be allergic to some and not others. And because some people are allergic to just scallops, but they might not be allergic to shrimp. Right. So it does depend on that person. And that becomes a frustration of ours. But asking the right questions is really important. So I'm glad. Thank you for sharing that, Carrie. It really is a challenge being the person eating that way, but also sharing how to share that information. Nicole Smith said, the only place that asked her about allergies was at a workshop at the University of Arkansas, Little Rock. That's very interesting that, and schools are a lot more in tuned with it, I think, more recently, because one of the schools years ago got sued by the students because they were required to eat on campus, eat the meal plan on campus. My hair's in my face. And they weren't providing for them. And so there's a lot of schools that are making changes to ensure that the students are accommodated with the dietary restrictions. There's still a long way to go, but I really think that we need to up our game on our hospitality side. Okay, so, and when we're going back to that slide with the reporting, right? How are you reporting that information to your attendee or to your catering partners, right? If you're just giving them this list here, that's really hard, especially with these different, with the staffing shortages right now. Can you filter it so that, hey, maybe like if I'm looking at this quickly, I've got 3 people that are gluten-free. So I've got 3 gluten-frees and I've got 5 vegetarians. But when you're looking at this list, also take out the outliers. Going back to that list that Jack shared with me yesterday, is like he had somebody allergic to pineapple, he had somebody allergic to strawberries. Just remove those completely from the menu. And, so then you don't even have to worry about that, right? Understanding that. Now, the second secret that I have to managing diet, managing the diverse needs is around the customization. And I'm just going to let you know that I hate the word special. I hate saying, hey, we've got people with special needs. Everybody is special. But we all have to eat. And no matter what our need is, we need a personalized or a customized plate. So if you can do me the big favor of taking out the word special dietary needs and just say, we've got people with dietary restrictions, excuse me. But when it comes with customization, you need to share your vision for the food and beverage, right? What are you wanting to do? You want everybody to walk through the same buffet? And so if that's the case, then we need to make sure that we've got menu items that are free of majority of the dietary restrictions, and maybe you can reduce the number of personalized plates that you're serving, right? What are the guest expectations? All those people who said that they, asked the questions, Tanya, Deidre, Audrey, Jocelyn, you all said that you asked the dietary restrictions in your registration form. So as an attendee with one, Kristen Carrie's now got an expectation that you're going to manage that, right? So how are you how are you communicating those expectations, and how are you going to share with them how you're going to meet those expectations, right? Can you increase that local flavor, the food quality? What are you, how are you incorporating that? So maybe you can get some local flavor for those individuals who are really looking for reducitarian and climate change options or more organic options. And with the food supply chain right now, going local is probably going to be your best bet if you don't have a convention of 17,000 people, right? If you've got a smaller meeting, those hotels can actually probably get stuff from farmers a lot more locally. And John, I think there's this picture that is supposed to pop up with a picture of, the local farmers market. Yeah, there you go, right? So can you get those from your local chefs? So somebody else said, they ended up having a lot of special meals that people have to pick up at registration tables. We email them to let them know. We would put them separate area. We had used Oasis before. We don't want to segregate, but we want those who have dietary restrictions to pull meals from this area. I actually worked in an event that did that. We were serving 7,000 people for lunch and breakfast, and we had 683 people with dietary restrictions. And I should have put this picture up. We had a choo-choo train of hot boxes, right? And everybody had to be at the front of the room. But how are you communicating them picking that up? And I loved how this hotel did it, or this hotel did it, is they had the servers line up directing everybody to the back of the room because they needed to fill up the back of the room first. Well, when they did that, they blocked that area for the attendees to pick up, and they blocked the sign as well. So there was no communication to them via an email. So how can you communicate better with that in doing that? And Somebody said to me the other day, 3 times the charm in getting people to read things, but can you do it on your event app? What other ways can you text them? And just saying, hey, as a reminder, here's where you pick up your meal, right? We have a meeting planners who are working on ethnic diversity in their menus. Oh, I love that. Deidre says, I have a conversation with the chef, with the CSM and the chef, ask what they plan to prepare for that person and give this information to that person. I also research to make sure that it's a reasonable substitution. Great, Deidre. And that's a really important conversation to have, because how many of you get your BEOs and at the bottom of it, it says 25 vegetarian, 10 gluten-free, 3 vegan. What are they getting served? You don't know. You don't know. So Kelly, how do you treat preferences and allergies the same? I do. And I really do, because you don't necessarily know, and you have to take that. You might as well do it so that it's not as cumbersome as a process across the board. You might as well go ahead and say, the gluten-free person might be following it for personal reasons, but you might as well give them that meal that's done for the celiac, because it's limiting the extra work having to be done in the back of the house. I've got 2 slides coming up that show you an event that I did in Atlanta a couple of years ago, and we were doing coffee and donuts, and Annette and Deidre, you saw the slide yesterday, but we had guests we had employees that were vegan and they were dairy free. And so when I did this, we actually changed the flyer going forward, and we had it, if you can see the difference there, the vegan, gluten, dairy, nut, soy, and soy-free options were available. Nobody believed me. They're not, you can't have that. But I did. I found a local bakery, Sally's. If you're in Atlanta, Sally's Bakery. Will, you're there, and Yvette, you're there. Sally's Bakery, they're in Sandy Springs, and they do all of these things. That's where I got all of these muffins. And everybody was asking me, where did you buy them? It treats this as an opportunity to try and force us to have specific items just for them. Deidre, I get it. It's a challenge. They want something completely and utterly different than everybody else. And that's where it comes into saying, hey, we don't have, this excess. You don't want to tell them that we don't have this excess budget, but we will work within our budgetary constraints, as well as, what the hotel's abilities are, the chef's abilities are to make that happen. I understand that frustration. Okay, and so the third secret that I have here is that we, looking at how to create these inclusive meals, and it kind of goes into what Deidre said, is that we have to really look at these menus across the board. Can you eliminate those outliers? Can you suggest different products that meet different dietary restrictions, and that can be used to create safe meals? There's Mary's Gone crackers that are free of, especially the seed ones, that are free of top allergens. I'm going to give a shout out to my friend Sarah, who's listening or watching on LinkedIn here. She actually has a company called Hungry Harry's, and she's got cake mixes and muffin mixes that are free of the top 14 allergens, and, suggesting those things to chefs so that they can do that. But she did post a question in here. I just noticed it. What about the attendees that trust their needs will be accommodated? Why fill out the dietary restrictions form? How can managers improve the trust with attendees? 100%, Sarah. And that's the challenge that we all have, is we have to have these conversations up front, and it's not just 3 weeks in advance before your meetings. You have to have it when you're signing the contract. Creating the accessibility. And I have these 2 pictures here. The one of the table with the coffee, it was actually a very high table. So somebody who was short in stature, or somebody who utilizes a wheelchair, would have had a really hard time getting the coffee mugs, the lids, and the coffee themselves. If your event is outside, is there access for them? Thanks. John just reposted the name of that company, Carrie, for you. What's the accessibility to get to the meeting space that you're having or the food and beverage functions that you're having, right? Making sure that the accessibility is there. The labeling here, this is some labels that I did for SpinCon a couple of years ago, working with the chef and making sure that everything was accurate on that. And then the next slide shows you one that was just recently done. My friend Carolyn Browning posted it on social media the other day. Can anybody tell me what they see that's wrong with this sign? I love the sign. I like the bold name of what the product is, and that they've kind of checkboxed what the items are. Shout out, unmute yourself and let me know what you see that's potentially wrong. Anybody? Is it free of or includes? Good question. But because anybody,
It's also vegetarian, right?
correct. You would think so. Cause I actually asked I asked Carolyn online, I'm like, what in the scones is not vegetarian? Right? Did they use, I don't know, use some food coloring or something? But my other point here is that they haven't noted that it's gluten-free, but under contains, there's no checkbox for wheat or gluten to say that it contains gluten. Does that make sense? So, I would go up there and say, okay, it's not checked gluten-free, so I would assume I could do it, but then at the bottom, it doesn't say that it contains gluten or it contains wheat, so, which is what it is, right? So I do like this, and I do like that they, that they've used the check boxes that they can check off, and and I've got some cards like this as well that you can use. This is much cleaner and nicer for that wherever she was for that. So I liked that. So the big thing here is listening. Kristen, you see those similar to what you see on our campus. That's great. And it really is a good way to do it, because people with dietary restrictions they need to know what's in it, and they need to know what's not in it, right? Because it is, especially when you've got, the nightshades allergy, or you've got the sesame allergy, and just so you know, sesame just became the top 9th allergen here in the United States. And as of January, in a couple of weeks, it must be labeled on prepackaged foods. And so it must be quite available for them to read. So it must say, even if it's in that spices or that flavoring at the bottom, it has to say it contains sesame. And raise your hand or let me know, how many of you do welcome international attendees from the European Union? And the reason that I ask that question is because since 2014, so 7 years ago, everybody from the European Union is required to label all unpackaged foods. So everything on a buffet, they have to label it. Even if you went into a Quick Trip to get gas and you were buying that hot dog off the thing, they actually have to provide the information to the attendee, to the person eating the food, if it contains any of the top 14 allergens. And so if you're doing that and welcoming international attendees, I would make sure that you're also doing the same thing here, right? There's 14 allergies. Oh, it's 7:58. I've got 2 minutes left. Sorry about that. We've got a few more slides to go through. Sharing and listening. This slide is to say we need to listen to our attendees, and we need to listen to our catering partners, right? Make sure that the communication is clear across the board. And let's go to if having an allergy with, like some of the people here, this is a woman who had an apple allergy. We made sure that there were no apples in the event. We went through all the sauces, the spices, making sure that there was no apple cider vinegar. And when we told her that we were doing that, it brought her to tears, and that she said, almost having died from an event the year before, that she no words that could show her how grateful she was to doing this. And all right, so no words that could show the gratefulness of us doing this for them. So I wanted to say, you know, when we're thinking about this, we need to understand the how, the what, the why, the who, the when we're providing for accommodations and dietary restrictions. And I'm going to go ahead and jump and tell you that I've got a new course that's coming out. This will actually give you a lot more detail on how to do this, walk you through the processes of this. It's called Every Meal Matters, and it starts on January 9th. And it's a one-of-a-kind training. It's 8 weeks long. We go through the different modules that help you create safe, sustainable, and inclusive dining experiences for everybody, for every guest. It helps you boost your bottom line and create loyal employees and clients. And we go through the current trends. We've got tools and techniques. We've got workbooks and reference guides. The different modules that we cover are your opportunities and obligations, your needs and preferences. And let's see, and we've got video lessons, audio lessons, checklists, because I know this is challenging. It is 100% challenging. I'm not going to deny that. And we need to really learn how to do this. And it's a lot of new processes that we have to take into place. And that's what this course does. It gives you those processes and the tools for you to do this safely and help your catering partners do this the same way. You're going to get 15 hours of CEU credits if you want, if you need them. We've got live one-on-one access to me every single week, twice a week, and how-to library. We've got 3 bonuses that come with that. It is Q&A. We've got a private Facebook group that we talk in, and you can talk with each other and bounce ideas off. And then we've got one-on-one discussions with experts like this gentleman here, who is a food and beverage director. Those interviews are specifically for you all that are taking this course. And my friend Tahira, you know, she does this a lot. She's actually written a book about universal designing events. She took this course and she actually learned a lot more herself. I am offering this course to you as an investment in your career and in your customers' lives as well for $997. It comes with all of these different options and ability for you to take these tools and techniques with you to the next level and upgrade your events to the next one. You can register for it now. The shopping cart closes on December 18th. So you've got 2 weeks to register. And it kicks off January 9th, right in the beginning of the new year, and it will run for 8 weeks going forward from that. And if you do register now, if you actually register by December 15th, I will actually throw in 6 packs of, you know, meal cards that they're shaped like this. They're 3 by 3. You get to pick the 6 packs of choices that you want. I have 35 different options. We can actually customize them as well. But if you register by December 15th, you actually get 6 of those packs, and they come 50 cards per pack. So does anybody have any questions for me that I haven't addressed?
If you have any questions, feel free to unmute. We got lots of thank yous and congratulations. Fabulous. Jocelyn said this has been fabulous, Tracy.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Let me know. I'm here. I'll hang out here for a few more minutes. If anybody's got questions, pop in, put up your camera and ask me questions. I will answer any questions that you have about dietary restrictions. You know, while you've got me here, it's just like I would do in the course. Just pop in here and let me answer questions you've got.
Let's do this. Let's say goodbye to our live stream audience.
All right. Thank you, live stream. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.